Ready to get started?
Yes, we'll do the roll call.
All right, could we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Pop,
Present.
Vice Chair Guyer,
Here.
Board Member Kim,
Here.
Board Member Liu,
Here.
Board Member Valentine, absent.
All right, so now is the time for oral communications. If there is any member of the public that wishes to speak to an item not on the agenda, this would be the time to do so. I have cards, but they're all for specific items today. So with that, I will close the oral communication. Are there any agenda changes, additions, or deletions today?
No changes.
Great. And I don't believe we have any minutes to approve at this point. So we'll move right into our public hearing. The first item is 451 University Avenue. The hearing of this item was continued from February 5th, 2015, ARB meeting to this date, but has now been postponed to March 5th, 2015 ARB hearing date. Do we need to give you a motion for that, or?
I'll just comment on that. We've advertised it in the paper and notices for the March 5th, so
That's
no
perfect.
need to continue.
Just what we're supposed to do. All right, thank you very much. So we'll move on to continued hearings, which is 429 University Avenue. This is request by Ken Hayes Architects on behalf of Kipling Post LP for architectural review of a proposal to demolish two one-story commercial retail buildings with a total of 11,633 square feet and construct a 31,407 square foot four-story mixed-use building with a below-grade 40-space parking facility on 2 levels on an 11,000 square foot site in the downtown commercial CDC GFP zoning district. Environmental assessment, initial study, and draft mitigated negative declaration. Public review period was November 17, 2014 through December 12, 2014. The hearing of this item was continued from the January 15th, 2015 ARB meeting to this date. I'm sure we have a staff report.
Thank you for the introduction and good morning, board members. This is the third formal hearing for 429 University Avenue. The project remains as described and there are no changes to the proposed floor-area and land use program. The first ARB formal hearing took place on November 20th, 2014. The comments received from the meeting will relate to the project's compatibility to its context and the overall massing and scale. The project has been revised and gone through the second hearing on January 15, 2015. The ARB comments were summarized in page 2 of the staff report. Since the last hearing, the project has been modified. The applicant has prepared a presentation to go through the changes. After the package distribution last week, staff has received additional public comments. The correspondence, along with the applicant's response letters, are provided at places for your consideration. That concludes staff reports.
I want to add into that. There are additional comments that we received from a board member who is not present, and those are being copied right now. And then finally, as Christy mentioned, it's the third public hearing, so the board by code is asked to make a recommendation today. If the applicant were to, if there was a desire to continue it and the applicant was amenable to this and allowed this, then that is something to work out and can be done.
All right, thank you very much. I do want to just disclose that I did receive an email from Board Member Ballantyne in regard to her not being present today. She had provided those comments as an attachment to that, and I forwarded that on to staff for printing for today. All right, so I think with that, we'd like to ask Mr. Hayes to present the changes for the project.
Let me get situated here before you start the clock. Good morning, members of the board, Chair Pop. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be presenting the project on behalf of my client, Kipling Post, LLP. Before I start, I'd like to extend my thanks to the planner, Christy Fong, and also Chief Planner, Amy French, for assisting us with bringing the application back to you. in a complete form. I think we're all familiar with the site on the corner of Kipling and University Avenue. It's a neighborhood that has buildings varying in height from 1 stories to 6 stories tall. Most of that mass concentrated on University Avenue. The program, as Christy pointed out, hasn't changed, so we have a ground floor retail. Second floor is office. The third floor is 3 residential apartments, about 2,500 square feet each. And the fourth floor has a big roof terrace because we've set the fourth floor back quite a ways, has a small office space as well as another apartment at that level, also about 2,500 square feet. This is the Shady Lane. This is the corner of Kipling and University Avenue. So the project site is this one here. And then another shot from the university side, the Apple building, former Apple building rather, is over here. So when we were here in January, we generally had your support, I think, with the modifications that had been made relative to mass, scale, setback, and I think more importantly, rhythm to the facade. And I think the material palette had been one that was endorsed at the prior hearing. But you had some details you wanted us to come back on, and those specifically were provide ground level planters on the alley side of the project. The residential railings, some concern about seeing personal property on the balconies, and so how could those railings be addressed? Want to make sure, Board Member Liu, that clear glazing is used at the ground floor to address your concern, so the drawings say that. Also on the Kipling side, there was some discussion about reducing the impact of the canopy that provided shelter at the elevator and the stair enclosure, and also maybe reduce the cantilever of the balcony at the second floor lobby, if you will. We had the public art in the lobby prior, and the Art Commission expressed some concern about that as well. So we have a new location we are proposing for the public art. And then there was some discussion about maybe a different treatment at the University Avenue and Kipling corner on the ground floor. The first slide to show the changes on the alley here, we've introduced 3 handmade clay pots, about 31, 32 inches tall, 18 inches rectangular, which would have horsetail planted in them. They're beautiful pots, and they would match the pots that we have on the 4th floor balcony. The horsetail also matches the planting that is in the built-in planter located here on the corner. On the University Avenue facade, this is in both these images, or all 4 of the next slides. The top image was the last one you saw. The changes here are the frosted glass laminated railing at the 3rd floor apartments to hide the personal property, clear glass on the ground floor, and we've done some reconfiguration of the unit on the 4th floor, bringing the living area to the front. So that resulted in some changes here. We added some windows there that you didn't see here before. And then on the corner, we really felt strongly about keeping a corner window, and I think we had the support of some of the members on that concept. It is consistent with one of the prescribed ways to address a corner, and our owner's program from the very beginning was a corner window. So that we feel pretty strongly about keeping that. On the Kipling side, again, the corner window is as was before. We have the translucent glass on both of these residential balconies, clear glass described on the ground floor. The biggest change has to do with this corner here. We've pulled it in 1.5 feet, I think, maybe about 1.5 feet, pushed it in towards the building so it doesn't hang out to the alley. The property line is right here. So we're about 4 foot back from the edge of the property line, I believe. And then the canopy that is here for the elevator, you see here, you can't tell in this drawing, we've pushed it back 5 feet. So it's instead of 10 feet, it's 5 feet deep from the elevator door approximately. And then you see the planter here that was there prior. And then the artwork, we're thinking, let's try to engage the artist to do something on the stairwell. I think there was some suggestion about that as well. We don't know what yet, but that's what we're gonna target. And I think that'll do a number of things, provide interest there on a blank wall, and also help with some of the scale and texture of that piece. On the alley, you see the change here where this canopy was pushed back 5 feet. You don't really notice the change here, although we did change the texture of the reveal pattern just getting a little bit more refined, and so it sort of reduces, makes a little bit smaller scale on the reveal pattern. You see the planters here, and then we have a ficus vine that's actually going to grow on the concrete wall located there. And then again on the 4th floor, there's some of those changes I talked about where we've just done some reconfiguring of the units, which has shifted some of the windows around, like these windows are different here. But other than that, no change. And then the only change on the side, excuse me, is the translucent glass. This is prior. And so now this piece of glass here is translucent, so that wraps that corner of that 3rd floor unit. And then the integration with the streetscape, you see the 1-story buildings coming along, it steps up to this piece, and then it steps up again to this piece. And as you all know, this is set back about 15 feet. So it will read like a nice transition, I think, to this the rest of the block. And then on the Kipling side, you can see where we've pushed this back as well there, and then the artwork will be on that corner to help with this transition. This is the prior. We thought it'd be good just to see them kind of next to each other. So you see the glass here and there, and then how this has been pushed back. And then that's where the artwork would go. And then on University Avenue, oh, you can see the planters down the alley as well. University Avenue, before and after. Now, I think it'll read more translucent than this. I don't want it to look like the Neo-Paris, all right, which will increase the mass. So we want it to be translucent enough to be differentiated, yet solid enough to hide what's behind it, and I think it will. And that's it. Thank you very much. I look forward to a recommendation for approval to the director. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So let's go to the board for any questions that we might have. Mr. Kim, do you want to get any clarifications or questions from staff at this point?
No questions on clarification. Thank you.
Vice Chair Glier and Board Member Liu.
I have a question for staff. I apologize. I should have sent this to you guys earlier. I do have a question on the transfer development right section of the code. So do you have the zoning here? It's like, I just want clarification on this. It's section 18.18.080, which is page, I think, what is it, page 17 of the TDR ordinance? And then, so there's one section that says, in reviewing a project proposed for a receiver site, pursuant to this section, the Architectural Review Board shall review the project in accordance with section 1648.120 of the code. And then you go to that section and it's been deleted. And so I was just trying to understand what maybe what was the intent of it, or what, I mean, is there something that we should be doing in lieu of this deletion? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's an error in our municipal code. 1648 was the chapter that was formerly entitled Architectural Review Board.
I see.
So that back in 2003, I want to say, or 4, was transmuted to chapters 1876 and 1877. The contents were put into those chapters about the ARB findings and purview, and then the process in those 2 chapters.
And then a follow-up is, in that same paragraph, it says the project may not be required to be modified for the sole purpose of reducing square footage unless necessary in order to satisfy the criteria of that said chapter. So is that still the case, that we are not allowed to reduce this square footage of this because it's a TDR project?
Unless necessary in order to satisfy the criteria for approval. So that's the judgment call. It's, you know, you have discretionary review, we have the ARB findings, and.
So we're saying that the ARB findings still trump this?
Correct.
We have to find that it is compatible, and if we don't find it's compatible, then the TDRs have to resolve themselves. Is that
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have no questions, and so at this point, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. I have 5 cards in front of me. If anyone else from the audience is interested in speaking to this item, please go ahead and fill out a card and bring it forward. We will begin with Mr. Jeff Levinsky, followed by Nelson Buchanan. Please do announce your name as you come to the mic.
My name is Jeff Levinsky. Good morning, board members and staff. Thank you very much for holding this hearing. I'd like to raise 2 issues about the project. First of all, some of you may have attended last night's State of the City address, and Mayor Holman focused particularly on the loss of thousands of square feet of retail space in Palo Alto as a major concern for our city. It's happening across town, but particularly downtown. Now, the staff report for this project doesn't address the issue of how this project will impact retail, but I estimate in looking at it that the new building will have several thousand square feet fewer for retail than the existing buildings. It's a bit hard to be more precise. The staff report incorrectly says that the existing buildings are 1-story. In fact, both of them are 2-story. There's an architect in the 2nd story of one of them. But based on my estimate that not all of the existing 12,000 or so square feet is retail, the new building will have approximately some 7,000 square feet, so there's going to be a loss of at least 2 or more thousand square feet of retail. So it will contribute to the citywide problem. You are being asked to make a finding number 4 on page 8, saying, quote, "The project reinforces University Avenue as the retail core of downtown Palo Alto by maintaining ground floor retail uses." I think it's important that you reject that finding, as the building is not maintaining retail space, but rather reducing retail space, and thus undercutting University Avenue's retail environment. My second point comes from visiting the property yesterday for about half an hour and looking at all the neighboring properties on University and Kipling. With one exception across the street, they're all basically 1- or 2-story buildings reflecting traditional Palo Alto architectural styles. One adjacent building has a very ornate facade. The buildings across the street of the new varsity buildings and such look very different than this. The Burge Clark design store across Kipling plans to remain as a mostly 1-story structure with a small 2-story extension. I can't see how the proposed design fits into this location, either in style or in size. It will completely change the character of that part of the street. I carefully read the owner's recent letter urging one take a walk down University Avenue, Lytton, or Hamilton to appreciate the diversity of styles downtown. True, but the building is going to be at one particular spot, so please focus on the neighboring buildings at that specific corner of Kipling and University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Levinsky. And next is Nelson Buchanan, to be followed by Stephen Levy.
My name is Nelson Buchanan. I live in downtown North neighborhood adjacent to the University Commercial Core. My neighborhood is the largest commercial parking lot in the city of Palo Alto. We may be tied for University South, Professorville, and we'll soon know the actual breakdown in the next 5 or 6 months. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. But of all the reasons I find I'm concerned about this project, parking is the least important. Let me try to recite problems, and I'd like to bring some solutions with each one of those. The issue is cumulative negative impact on the quality of neighborhoods. And by the way the planning process works in most cities, is cumulative impact is not a factor. Each little project says there's no significant change in this project, but cumulatively there is. And I don't have time to explain all that, but I can appeal to your common sense. The first problem is the housing job imbalance. And I don't have time to explain any of these things, but that tears at the social fabric of Palo Alto, in my opinion. They've become a city of commuters. That's not good. If I had an aerial camera, I'd like to show you the parking lot on known as Highway 101 and 280, trying to get off the ramps at this very minute. You go out any day during the week, you see almost dangerous situations of the right-hand lane being blocked because it can't get off the exits. Parking. I've generated tons of information about the impact of parking. I would like to talk about retail, but it do not have time. So quickly to the solutions. One of the millennial friends, in fact, some people on the Planning Commission point out that this is probably the wrong inventory to be adding downtown. We could be offering smaller units instead of 2 units. That there's an appetite among the millennials for much smaller units downtown, and this is a chance to do it. Traffic, on the way out of this traffic thing is a parking assessment district, the traffic management district that's being formulated. It's time to make that an accelerated priority of the council. I know for a fact a donation has been made very recently to the city of Palo Alto to expedite that project, and more on that later. What I'd like to do is try to find a better way to dialogue with you and the appeals process for this project coming forward, because we've crossed over the line for cumulative negative impact that is affecting the neighborhoods. I look forward to having a longer discussion with you. These are not easy issues. The retail issue alone is so complicated, but the fact that what Jeff just described is that we're having a material drop in the inventory of retail, whether it's right or not. Each one of these buildings is actually knocking out ground floor square footage. And in general, all of this is deficit information in the staff reports. And I think that's the issue that the City Council will be interested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Stephen Levy, to be followed by Michael Harbour.
My name is Stephen Levy. I live downtown. I've worked on University or Hamilton since 1969. I walk those streets virtually every day and night since I came here in 1963. I come in support of the project, but more important, in support of your process. I want to thank Christy and Amy and you. I do believe that public agencies appropriately negotiate and give feedback to project proponents. And what I've seen, both in what Ken Hayes did today and what the applicant has done earlier, is 2 or 3 rounds of actually responding to your architectural review board request. I'm no architect. I know that tastes differ. I don't think I have a right to impose my taste on a project proponent any more than I do on a homeowner, so I have to trust on you on that. I do think that the process and the proposal is legal. That's what I get from reading the document, that the parking with the transfer of development rights and the in lieu payments is legal for this property, that the renovation is appropriate. I know that some residents would like to see University Avenue back as it was in the 60s. It was pretty rocking in the 60s, but in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, it wasn't. And we're now in 2015. One needs to expect change. Town and Country is changing, Stanford Shopping Center is changing, and downtown needs to change as well to keep pace with competitive pressures, to keep pace with who the customers are. I appreciate that the proponent added housing, and that housing is apartments and not condos. I appreciate that new buildings allow the city to impose green building standards. If we keep everything the same as it was, we're going to have a more difficult time meeting our green standards. And finally, to Nielsen's point of cumulative impacts, that has to be taken into account with cumulative mitigation programs like the TMA and like TDM and like the proposals at Palantir and SurveyMonkey to reduce employee use. You just cannot take one part of the equation on cumulative impacts and assume we're going to do nothing over time to mitigate them. So it's a very difficult issue. Thank you, but I do support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. And next we'll have Michael Harbour, to be followed by Sam Arson.
Good morning, I'm Michael Harbour, and I own the building at 421 Kipling Street. And you know, I have to say that I am impressed with the design of the building and what has evolved over time. And I think it is a beautiful building, but you can't look at it in a vacuum, that it has to be looked at in the context of the neighborhood and that specific narrow street, Kipling Street, with which this building is anchoring. And that's my whole reason for being here. You know, I'm not a developer. I'm not a speculator. I'm a physician. I've missed 3 days of work because I think it's important to be able to come and speak my mind about our community, and I really like this community. And yes, you can say I have a vested interest because I own a building down the street, but that's a very unique street for Palo Alto. And, you know, this week's Daily Post front page was, you know, second chance for reviewing this massive building. And I think many people in the community consider this a massive building. And I have nothing against it in and of itself, but Kipling is not the same as the other streets that are going down there. And I've owned my building here since 2001, and I've been hit on that street a couple of times because when cars are parked on both sides of Kipling Street, that street effectively acts as a one-way street. It's one person goes and then another person goes. You can't have two cars going simultaneously. They clip off each other's side view mirrors, and that's what's happened to me twice. So I actually went and read very thoroughly the Hexagon Transportation Consultants report that was presented as part of this application. And on page 39, it's stated here, it should be noted that a queue of more than a single vehicle in the southbound direction, so that's people exiting Kipling Street and going towards University, could prevent other vehicles from turning right from westbound University onto Kipling Street due to the extremely narrow roadway and presence of parked vehicles. I don't know if any of you have really gone through and read this. It's tedious, but it's stated right there. And then the other thing on page 47, right there, in the event that a vehicle making a right turn out of the alleyway, so alleyway 30, where all these cars are going to be directed from Waverly Street, going down into the garage, then coming up and either going to be turning left or right onto Kipling Street. It says, in the event that a vehicle making a right turn out of the alley onto Kipling Street encountered a significant queue, the driver might choose to make a left turn onto Kipling Street and then onto Lytton to circle around the block to get to where he or she is going. That particular narrow streets don't lend themselves for an underground parking lot that's going to have a net 166 new cars. That's what the report says. There's going to be 166 net new cars. So the building is beautiful. I don't have any problem with it. I'd like to be able to mitigate this aspect from Kipling Street, and that's my biggest thing. So I wish you could please
Thank you very
consider
much.
that.
Thank you. And then the last card I have today is Sam Arsen.
Good morning. My name is Sam Arsen.
If you don't mind, could you speak right into the mic for us?
Sure.
We're trying to make sure everyone can hear you.
Sure. Good morning.
Thank
My
you,
name is Sam Arsen. I manage and lease several buildings in downtown Palo Alto, and I've been in the downtown area for over 20 years. I pretty much have several of the merchants and tenants that are currently in downtown as my clients. I think I support this building quite a bit. I think we need to keep the city vibrant. We have a lot of competition from other cities and other retail areas. This is an older building with failing systems. I have some of the tenants that are in there have been my clients. We need to make sure that the new building, which is well designed, it's gone through several revisions already. They've addressed several of your concerns. So we just want to make sure, I just want to make sure that we're able to support the current merchants that are in town, that we're moving with the times. I think one of the things is we just can't remain unchanged. I mean, we have to move with the times. I have several people that have looked at that building, that they are interested in it. They would be a draw to consumers all over from the downtown area, from the Palo Alto area and outside area. So I just feel that, we've done everything that the owners have done everything they can to accommodate your concerns, and I believe it should be approved. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other cards from the public. If there's anyone else that wishes to speak, please come forward now. And seeing no one doing that, we will close the public hearing and move back to the board for comments and discussion. And so, Board Member Kim, if you'd begin for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for representing your project. And I just appreciate that. I think the slides, when you went back and forth between the previous scheme and the current one, helped quite a bit to show us the final revisions that you've made here. I mean, I agree with a lot of the comments that were made. I think the process has really made the building a lot better. And, if we are going to make the recommendation today, I don't think I would have a problem with making that. And I just appreciate your willingness to really understand our point of view and our comments and to take those into consideration. And I think it's a great building. Thank you.
Thank you. I always think it results in a better project, so thank you for your comments.
Board Member Guyer, Vice Chair Guyer.
I agree. There's some nice changes. I think what we were talking about, I agree, is that we were talking about the rails will be translucent, not opaque, basically. But I knew that was what you had intended. It just had looked a bit white on the rendering. Yeah, I mean, realistically, I've heard various things about the massing and everything else. But I mean, if the ordinances allow a four-story building to be built in this particular location, I think the applicant has done a heck of a job working with all the requirements that we've put on them and the suggestions we've given, and I think the final solution is a good solution based on the criteria. I don't have a problem with the corner being the way it is. I don't particularly need to have the 45 or the open corner. It's not that big a deal to me. The only other thing I was thinking is that to make the building look smaller or less massive, whatever you want to call it, is removing the upper eyebrow, and I just don't think that would help the design of the building itself. Sometimes, I mean, I know we keep talking about you can't judge a building like this in a vacuum, but the reality of it is also is that sometimes if you would try adapting too much to the environment around it, it ruins the actual design of the building itself. So I could support this, the building like this or the project the way it stands.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Liu.
So thank you, Ken. So since this project seems to be so polarizing to the community, I spent a lot of time trying to think outside of the box. And so I don't really have any issues with the particular building, given the rules that we have. I actually went and looked at other cities and to see what other rules, say like San Francisco or Santa Monica, are doing to try to address the concerns that the residents have on this particular project. So I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about it, and please rein me in if I'm taking up too much time. But I just want to throw out examples, and these are not things that are purview of the ARB. This is really planning commission level kind of comments. So I think to Mr. Buchanan's concerns about the overflow parking, like the best cities in my mind, like Berkeley and Boulder, have like a 40% single occupant vehicle trip generation, where Palo Alto, we're in like the 67 to 74%, somewhere there. So other cities have far fewer single occupant, I'd say other comparable cities have far fewer single occupant trips than Palo Alto, and that I think, are morally responsible to reduce that number. So for example, in Boulder, the downtown businesses the employees, full-time employees who work in the downtown assessment district get free transit passes. That's paid for by parking garage and parking meter revenue. And those employees drive half as much as employees who are sort of outside of the downtown district who don't get the free passes. And that, to me, that's huge. And that really takes a lot of pressure off of both parking and also traffic. They also have a 0.006% sales tax that helps subsidize the EcoPass for residents. And they do that by neighborhood. And then also Denver has like a 0.4% sales tax for building rail. And I've been out to Denver, and they're building light rail all over the place, and they're line queues like our Caltrain, and they're being much more progressive about it. And they're really trying to get the single occupant trips down to 25% by 2025. And I think that I think Mr. Buchanan is saying that our policies are sort of behind the times, and I do agree with him about that. And then even with the pass, then if you get a pass, then there are maybe like 50 or so merchants that give discounts for all the people for the employees that have the passes. In downtown Santa Monica, another example is they have a Park Me website. So it gives the number of spaces that are available in any garage at any time of the day, and there's an app too, so you get it on the phone. It will tell you the percentage fullness of the garage, right? It will also tell you the cost. Sometimes it's free, sometimes there are charges for it. And then you can also reserve a spot. If you know you need to be in downtown, if you have an interview or something and you need a spot and you have to drive, there will be one there for you if you reserve it. Century City in Los Angeles, the shopping mall, like every single space in the garage has a red or a green light. So if you're going into the garage, these huge, vast garages, you don't need to head down into that section that's all red. You can see it's all up in this, it's like all up here in the ceiling lights. And so we just need to get with the times. Other places are much more progressive about it than we are, and we just need to get moving with that. With regards to massing, I agree with Board Member Guyer that if our zoning allows 50-foot buildings, then that's the rule. And if the community feels that it should be something else, then we should change the rules. In San Francisco, on certain streets, on pedestrian-oriented streets like Hayes Street, which is a main street like University Avenue, they really want to protect the existing retail and the narrow pattern of the rhythm of the storefronts. And so they actually, in their zoning code, it's section 121.6, there's a restriction of lot mergers in pedestrian-oriented streets, and then it gives a dimension, like a maximum dimension. And so, for example, Hayes Street is 50 feet. Market Street, parts of Market Street, it may be like 150 feet or whatnot. It varies depending on the location. But for the people who, from that we've received, comments from that want to keep downtown 1 story, 2 stories, they want the sun and all of that, something like that needs to be in the comp plan and the zoning. Like the ARB is not in that position to take off that much square footage on a project. It's the zoning entitlement. We're not there, but I'm saying if the community feels that way, change the rules. Also in Hayes and in San Francisco, there's this issue about the skinny streets. They have additional height limits on narrow streets, and in San Francisco, they consider it less than 40 feet. So that would not necessarily apply to Kipling, which is a 50-foot right-of-way. But for example, it has a daylight plane. And they measure it differently. It's a 50-degree daylight plane. They measure it differently than we do in Palo Alto. But I sort of sketched it on the drawings. And Ken's project would comply with San Francisco's narrow street daylight plane. That's not to say we wouldn't have something else, but I think to the point, the idea though is that if there's a skinny street that has different sun and visibility issues or whatnot, then our zoning could or should, I don't know, have special regulations regarding that, but we don't at the moment. I should also mention too that that particular ordinance in San Francisco does not apply at the corners. So like downtown Palo Alto, they look at larger, like it's okay to have a larger building at the corner, and then mid-block, they should sort of step down. And then the last thing, which I think has been debated, I think last fall in the Planning Commission was, retail chain stores and retail stuff. And so San Francisco does have a fairly crazy conditional use permit process for what they call formula retail, where they try to manage the type and mix of stores. So you don't have two big chain stores selling the exact same thing in one neighborhood and put out all of the local businesses. So that's under discussion elsewhere in the city, but I just would throw that out there today. And then I think we also had some residents of Kipling talk about trying to create a Victorian street or something like that. And I actually like that idea. In downtown Oakland, there's a really great little place called Preservation Park, which is 16 Victorians. 5 of them were originally on that block, and then the other 11 were moved. They were like threatened with demolition from like freeway widenings and whatnot, street widenings. And so they moved, the developers moved it all together into one space, and it's office, event space, and a little bit of retail space. But that was not easy to do. It took them, it was 2 different developers, then the city had to step in, and it took them 10 years. Like, that's not an easy thing to do, and that requires like way more, planning and legwork than we can do here. But if you guys feel strongly about that, that's the way, it's a really great idea, and I think, to me, like Kipling could be better than it is.
And it's a big city-owned.
The city-owned lot, I'm thinking, is ripe for something really, for something really great there. That parking lot's always been sort of, just not ideal. Okay, and then the other issue with Kipling and I think Lane 30 was that they were narrow. So, I used to work on like new urbanist developments, and we purposely designed skinny streets, and they were always very difficult to get through cities, especially like from like the fire department and public works. Normally, what ended up happening was that there was certain parts of the block were striped red to allow the passing of cars. And so it seems logical to me that something like that would happen on Kipling, or in one way. Yeah, or one way, or in. So in my neighborhood, we have lots of little skinny streets. If there's some sort of a big event, whatever, the city restricts parking to just one side of the street. They don't do it every day, but it's on certain days they do it. And they've been testing out different scenarios, if they, just based on when they anticipate more demand. But otherwise, on lower demand days, they do want to allow people to like park in front of their house or whatnot. And I'm sort of curious that there was nothing in the staff report. There's been a community, the residents have mentioned it, but it wasn't really addressed specifically in the Hexagon environmental studies. It didn't really get in, I didn't really see anything specific to like passing cars or whatnot. Okay, and then thank you for the glazing. And I just did want to follow up on that with the solar ban and the low E glazing. And to me, this is a really important issue. I think that is clear or Starfire doesn't make a difference to me. It's, as I checked it, it's a clear glazing with low E has a 70% light transmittance value, and Starfire is like 75% light transmittance value. But if you use tinted glass, it goes down to as low as 35%. So I think we have to be, I don't know what to say. I think we should have some sort of guidelines or just pay attention to it on every single retail project, because 35% is not acceptable.
You looked at solar band 70?
Solar band 60, with the various, you know, I mean, they have a dozen different, there are a dozen different
Right, but
tints.
there's the clear one.
Right.
Right.
The clear ones are up in the 70 to 75%, but
That's what
the tints
278
go
is.
way down really fast.
Yeah, with the color.
40%, 50%, way down. And I see it on lots of new buildings. I'm not picking on you, other
Yeah.
buildings. And it's a to me, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't even see how retailers stay in business if nobody can see through the storefront. I mean, I don't get it. So, so that's where I am on the project.
Great, thank you.
I support the project. I think it's, in an ideal world, I really support more of our 2.0 floor area ratio. The 2.86 seems big to me, particularly at the back. I'd like the stepping. I think there should be like a larger discussion on the TDRs. Like, basically, we're preserving some older buildings, right, with seismic and historic renovation, and we're trading it off for a bigger building here. But I don't know what the other end it's like a seesaw. I don't know since those don't come here, I never see the end of the seesaw. And so I'm trying to weigh the balance, not knowing. And I think it seems to me it's ripe for a community discussion about that, you know, a larger picture of how that ordinance has been working. Okay, and that's it.
Thank you.
That's it. All right. So I'm going to try and summarize this a little bit and weave my own thoughts into this. I agree with Alex's comments about the 2.86. I mean, it's a lot for this site. It's a lot. And, you know, on top of the 2.86, there's a 200 square foot bonus that was taken. And all of these things in aggregate have created what is a significant building. That said, I think you've done a masterful job of managing that square footage, and the changes that you've made to the building since we first saw it are dramatic. I really appreciate the presentation that you brought today where you showed the subtle changes in the balcony. What I really wish you had shown today was the first proposal to today.
You only have 10 minutes.
I'd give you another 30 seconds for that one, right? I think it's important for people to understand how this process has worked, in particular on this building, which does seem to be really polarizing. Yeah. And I think that there are projects where we don't have a lot of challenge and it's a fairly easy approval process, and others that go through 3 full hearings and sometimes a preliminary as well. And it takes us a little longer to get to a place where we're supportive. Alex has said there are laws in place that permit this type of development, and Ms. Wong and her team conform to those laws. The parking here is beyond what you're required to provide. You've paid into the in lieu, you've used the TDRs, and still opted to provide 5 more than are needed. The parking problem is not this building. The parking problem is the buildings that have been built before this, 10 years ago, that are being used as office space far in excess of what their parking provides or their use anticipated. And the infrastructure in our city has not kept pace. And I'm going to put it on the council to take steps to take care of this. It's not this individual building that's the problem. And I'm going to be very surprised if this building gets appealed on that basis, because it really, it has no standing as I see it. Kipling is commercially zoned. The transitions that you've made relate to that well. Yeah, it's a narrow street. Yeah, it's got a different character. But the zoning contemplates all of this, and it's in place, and you've followed it. You comply. I am going to condition my approval on an evaluation of the street and some parking changes, perhaps removal of a couple parking spaces to mitigate the concerns about stacking. You know, if we're really seeing accidents happen there because the street is so narrow, we should think about a one-way street. I don't want to see one more accident. I don't want to see one more person hurt because of the narrowness of a street. But this building is not changing the dimension of the street. This building is not changing the parking and the way it occurs on that street. I'm having a little trouble understanding where the frosted glass is versus the not frosted glass. And I want to just make sure that it's on all of the residential balconies. It looked to me like it wasn't on Kipling.
Is that all residential balconies that face the two public street frontages? And this side here, Chair Pop, right here.
Okay.
On the alley,
on University and Kipling, it's some type of a translucent but not transparent glass.
right, and then what you would see, you know, on this angle here.
All right. It's not quite clear from your drawings, and the translucency sort of stops mid-panel even on one of the drawings. So we just want to make sure that that's well coordinated and clarified. And I'm going to ask you to provide a sample of that glass to subcommittee for us. I appreciate the finer grain that you've developed for the building and the character that you've changed and how you've relooked at that. You know, I'm jumping around here a little bit. The unit design itself, you know, as Mr. Levy and others have described, it's great to have housing downtown. I'd love to have seen smaller units. You certainly have the parking to accommodate that. It would have been great to get that, because I think that's the most desirable for the millennial generation, which are likely to be using this. On A3.2, I have just one concern with the rear elevation. You show CP2. You know, you've got this sort of sawhorse that's projecting forward. That's all the CP2 finish.
You're on 3.2?
I'm on 3.2, yeah, drawing number 1. And right next to the little planter bollards and the trash area, just to the left of that, you've got a panel that is CP2, and the other legs are quite slender, and then you've got this one leg that's the same finish. I was going to suggest that maybe that should be CP1 instead. Very minor little
On the left-hand side
nudge.
there,
Yeah,
where it comes
on the
down.
left-hand side. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's not going to make or break my approval
I
of
would
this
need to look
project.
at just the,
Yeah,
the planes
in
that-
looking
how
at
the
it,
planes come together.
it just looks like it's not speaking the same
I wouldn't
language
want
as
to
all the other
change, yeah,
pieces.
I wouldn't want to change the color in a coplanar transition, so.
All right.
I want to look at the,
It is coplanar. I was trying to figure it out from the plans, and it looked to me like it was set back just a little
I
bit.
think it might be coplanar.
Okay. If it is, fine. If it's not, please consider that.
Okay.
I'd also like you to make the height of your mechanical enclosure match the height of the units, whatever that might be. So as you
Yes.
start to understand what your mechanical units are, currently the drawings show the mechanical units lower than the edge of the parapet that surrounds it, the wall that surrounds it, and I'd like them to match. On 13A8.1, you show metal plates above and below the windows, and I haven't been able to find the finish of that material.
I'm sorry, I'm writing these down.
That's fine. 13A8.1. You have a window system, and at the bottom edge and at the top edge, the sill and the
Right,
head,
so there's
there's a
a-
metal plate shown that doesn't indicate finish.
That will match the window system.
It matches the window system. Okay, that's what I was hoping. All right, terrific. So only two other things that I'm challenged with. First, I don't feel the landscape is very satisfactory on this project. We've got some narrative about the landscape, the types of planters that are being used, the types of plantings that are in it. And then the conclusion says, and I quote, "All plant material shown is subject to change in the design process. Plant material in the containers may also be substituted or replaced at various times during the growing season." So we don't have any clarity as to what you're planning to do or how you're planning to do it, because there's no plan, there's no commitment.
Yeah, so they've proposed horsetail in both the potted plants on the ground floor, and the built-in planter is also horsetail. And then there's ficus that is on the wall immediately behind that,
Right.
on the ground
Growing
floor.
up the wall.
I think the way that's written, they're giving you the flexibility to say what you want. That's what the landscape and the architectural firm wants, but they're keeping it open for your input.
All right, so
I
here's
think.
what I...
Okay. And then on the fourth floor terrace, it's a boxwood hedge.
Yeah, so I'm not in the position of saying which particular plants I want or what the design should be. I'm in the position of saying what I want to compel you to do. And the boxwood, I think, are too small and too few. The design is too sparse, and I think we need to see something more capable than what's proposed. So I'm in support of this project at this point, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve this project as presented and in accordance with the staff report and attachments that it includes. The approval is conditioned with the following items: the signage, the art placement and lighting of the art, the glass for the balconies, the landscape plan should all return to subcommittee for review.
I'll second.
And I'm sorry, not quite done? You may not like these next things, we'll see.
Okay.
And in addition to that, because they're not legible in this package, I'd like staff to review the photometrics and confirm that they are appropriate. And I'll note that on A2.8, images listed A, B, and C for the types of light fixtures don't match the legend, which is labeled B, D, and C. And then one last item for staff, which is to follow up on the parking conditions on Kipling, and if that should be made a part of the project requirements in attempt to mitigate concerns. I think that seems appropriate. All right.
Okay, I can live with those modifications. I guess the only one is the last one. Can we really tie that to this building? I would have a problem with that.
That was my question for staff. Do we have purview over that?
Well, so let me just describe why I'm doing that. So we have a traffic analysis that says that there is a concern about queuing on the street as a result of placement of the garage and the number of cars that are part of this. And so it seems appropriate to me that because there is this potential for impact in that area, that it would be appropriate to tie that obligation to the project. But Ms. French, maybe you can describe your
Yes, I'd like to weigh in on that. When you said the word mitigation, my ears perked up. You know, the environmental document did not find that mitigation was required. So mitigation, we wouldn't want to add mitigation for queuing. I do have an email from our Transportation Division staff that talks about the queuing or taking turns. But, you know, and he says that any proposed changes to Kipling, such as converting to one-way, removal of parking, would require direction from City Council to investigate. So I don't think it's in your purview to direct us to do that, you know, as a part of your, recommendation. You know, certainly to encourage staff to explore, you know, ways to make the existing conditions safer. Perhaps there's some existing conditions that, you know, could be explored. But I wouldn't say related to this project, because then, as it says, it sounds like a mitigation. And,
All right,
and
that's
we're
fine.
not.
So I'll modify my motion to retract that component.
Okay.
You accept that?
I'll accept that.
Okay, great. Any further discussion?
Can we add a comment that like in our motion, that this is a concern that we have and we can't recommend anything, but just that so that that it's documented and it doesn't fall through the cracks?
Yeah, I think you're on the record as stating such a concern, along with the community is on record. So, you know, certainly that's something that, you know, staff can be looking at. We do have a transportation division and folks looking at the parking and other situations, including permit parking programs.
One feedback that I've gotten from the council is that since they don't get verbatim minutes, they don't know exactly how we feel about things unless it's in a motion. And even on appeals, when they do get like a full transcript, they don't always read if we have like 3 hearings or something on a project, they're not going to read every single word in a transcript. So I was trying to think of a way of doing it sort of, as like just a executive summary or something.
Okay. So I'm ready for a vote. So at this point, all in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? So this passes 5-0.
4.
I'm sorry, excuse me, 4-0-1-0. And in closing, happy to give the applicant 5 minutes for any closing comments that you like.
I've taken enough of your time today, but thank you for, helping us through the process. Like I said, I think it results in a better building. I'm much happier with where we are today, so thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Great, so shifting around a little bit, the discussion that we're having here is because Board Member Ballantyne is out today, we are just discussing the subcommittee process for the day. Board Member Ballantyne and I are responsible for that, and so in Board Member Ballantyne's place, Vice Chair Guyer will take the responsibility for that with me today. So thank you for doing that. All right, so the next item on our agenda is 3275 El Camino Real, request by Kevin Donardi for a preliminary architectural review of a new 7,489 square foot, 3-story mixed-use development on a 7,490 square foot vacant lot. The zone district is Service Commercial District, CS. And I'll just point out that this is a preliminary review, and there will be no formal action taken today. But I know staff has a report prepared to describe the project for us, so please.
Yes, good morning. The request is to conduct a preliminary architectural review of a new 7,489 square foot, 3-story mixed-use development on a 7,490 square foot vacant lot. The conceptual plans show 3 residential condominiums over commercial ground floor space. The ground floor level contains 1,123 square feet of office commercial space and 1,800 square feet of garage. The 2 upper floors would be 3 residential units within 4,494 square feet of floor area. The 3 residential units would each be 2-story. The building concept includes a contemporary design with street-facing building walls meeting the current build-to line, approximately 23 feet. Ground floor facing building wall would be set back a minimum of 4 feet from the property line to supply the 12-foot effective sidewalk from curb to face a building. The remainder of the ground floor wall would be set back 33 feet from the property line across a length of 26 feet. The upper floor walls are set back an additional 12 feet from the property line. The garage setback allows the commercial space to be visible to the pedestrians. The upper residential units are accessed by a secure gate and small passage to an open stair and elevator. The front unit above the commercial space is stepped back from the street edge. The units are arranged around an open staircase. The alignments of these units are intended to create an optimal private open space for each unit. Each unit would contain its own private deck. The project includes a total of 11 parking spaces, where 11 spaces are allowed for a mixed-use project. 2 of the stalls in the open area behind the building would be equipped with a parking lift system to provide 4 of the 6 residential spaces. The project is subject to meeting the context-based design criteria, the El Camino Real design guidelines, and the performance criteria. The formal ARB submittal will be analyzed with respect to the aforementioned criteria. Staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board conduct a preliminary review of the conceptual development and provide comments on the design to staff and the applicant. And that concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any cards from the public on this item, so we will open and close the public hearing for this project today, and go straight to the board for, I'm sorry, actually, so sorry. Yeah, let's have the applicant do a presentation. So is there someone here from the applicant group to do a presentation? I don't see anyone in the front row here ready to go. Oh, okay, great. So if you would please introduce yourself. You'll have 10 minutes for a presentation, and
my name is Bob Iverson with Hunt Hale Jones Architects, and I'm representing Kevin Donardi. And we had a preliminary design review or preliminary package with the city representatives, and we had a similar size project, similar 3 units and such, but we had to flip the plan to keep the street tree out front. And so we have come back with this revision, and to maintain, as Margaret had said before, and thank you, Margaret, for the good presentation. It's sort of a pinwheel design up above for the units, and that kind of helps us create the open spaces for each of the units. And at this point, we are trying to keep at the ground level, keep the office very visible and well lit by stepping back the garage entrance, which wouldn't necessarily need to be moved up anyway, I don't believe, except for it would just create more lot coverage. So one of the items that we have discovered is there is probably a little more desire for an entry element, especially maybe at the residential portion, and we're ready to add some sort of system that would enhance that front entry to the residential area. As far as the design goes, at this point we are definitely looking for your input. It is contemporary at this time. We haven't got into heavy detailing. We're mostly looking for conceptual approval, as well as any commentary you might have along those lines. It's a very clean design at this point, which would be mostly siding of sorts, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And the other items I think we should point out are trying to keep some of the balconies and such semi-private by partially closed yet partially open parts of the railing system. And I think that's really all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'm certainly willing to answer anything you have to say. So.
All right, well, thank you very much for bringing this forward as a preliminary. We always appreciate that. We'll go ahead and start with Board Member Liu.
I don't have anything to say on this project. I apologize for being not so well thought about this particular one. I guess my main question would be, how does this comply with the El Camino design guidelines, right? So, I mean, we have like a 25-foot high sort of recommended minimum height right at the street edge, which it seems like your project doesn't meet. We've had other projects that can't get there just because of the shape of the lot or whatnot. And so I think that would be a concern, one. Two, I think you mentioned like trying to enhance the entrance. I think that that is an issue too, that the lobby entrance seems so small and sort of insignificant. I think that that should be more, yeah, the entrance should definitely be enhanced. You also mentioned the privacy between the balconies, and I did notice that when I was looking at the plans. Between the terraces on the back units does not seem ideal. And then I think the other thing that I think has come up before in other projects is that like the required open space does need to meet a certain noise level, and I think it is an issue on El Camino, if I recall, that sometimes you have to do like glass, taller glass railings to mitigate the noise from the traffic. Okay. So I think that the design of that is an issue. I do think this is very challenging in a very small site, and I think like ideally it would be sort of combined with the neighboring property or whatnot. But yeah, that's tough. And we do have other. We do have a project of sort of a similar style with lots of zigzags and wood and plaster under construction now in the California Avenue area, and it generally got a favorable review by the board at that time. And I think that you're trying to do something similar, and I don't object to that. I don't object to that approach. I think the curb cut and sort of the driveway entrance is not ideal. It's come up before on small sites on El Camino, mid-block sites. It's sort of an unavoidable issue. It's not ideal, but I think you are entitled to that. In an ideal world, we wouldn't do that.
We were recommended by Public Works or to maintain that and use that curb cut. So.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, we'd like remove the curb cuts and try to get you an entrance somewhere like on the side street in the back or something, but that's not possible.
That's not possible here.
I know. We have, there are other projects on El Camino where property owners have been able to come up with access agreements along the back sides of the property to get access into the backs without having to do the curb cuts. It has happened. I don't think it's not easy to do, but it has happened before on some of our mixed-use projects. I would encourage you, if there's a way to do it, to try to do it, but we can't require that. So that's all the comments that I have at this time. Thank you.
Vice Chair Goyer.
I agree. I don't know, when I saw this, first of all, I guess technically it's a mixed-use development, but I mean, 1,100 square feet on the ground floor that I think is done very inefficiently. Almost seems like it's just, the 1,100 is added just so you can have the project classified as a mixed use rather than just a housing development on El Camino, which is not allowed. The way to me, the front entry, that massive sort of, I don't know, driveway or whatever doesn't really seem to do anything for you. Again, also, as with my fellow commissioner, the entry to the residential area is weak. I'm not a big fan of stacking, which I've let known, but I will let that part slide. It's just, I don't know, right now there's so many things in here that just don't really make sense to me. On the elevation, or I should say on the sort of isometric, you've got some nice little roof areas that I would think would make magnificent balconies, but you've got them as just plain roof, and to me that seems like a waste. I'm not a fan at all of Juliet balconies. I don't like those, especially on a big massive blank wall and then just to plop this one little Juliet balcony there. Other than that, I mean, it's going to need to change considerably before I give this some, go-ahead type situation. That's it.
Can you clarify, I guess, considerably meaning?
Well, okay, I mean, considerably meaning I think the ground floor needs to be much more efficient. If you're actually going to have a mixed use, I think it ought to be more of a mixed use, not a, I mean, I'm a sole practitioner in my business and my office is almost as big as this space. So I mean, to me, that means you're not really going to do much with 1,100 square feet on El Camino. So I mean, to me, that's sort of wasted space. So either you enhance that to make it something of a more viable commercial area, so that you could actually, do what needs to be done on El Camino, and then up, like I said, the way you've got the units upstairs laid out, I don't really have a problem with. It's just you've created certain pockets, for instance, like this or I should say this roof up in front, the flat roof, that if you're going to have that, why not make it a balcony? I mean, if you're going to have little apartments like this, as much open space as you can get is desirable, and especially where you've got it here and you're not taking advantage of it. It's that sort of thing.
Board Member Kim.
Yeah, thank you for coming to us with a preliminary review. I'm kind of curious what the overall design concept of the building is. To me, it still feels like it's lacking in some kind of a statement that it's making as an architectural building to El Camino. It still seems a little bit frantic, and I'm wondering if there was a reason to the pushing of ins and outs, not only along El Camino, but through the rest of the building. And I'm also looking at the south elevation. And just, curious why you chose to go with the blank stucco wall where it is. I mean, I don't know if there's any kind of preconceived notion of what might end up at that corner, but how will it relate to that? How does it relate to the current restaurant that's there? And even the north elevation where it relates back to the hotel. And then, is this site currently the site of the pool?
No,
Is it in front of the pool?
Is it at the pool, or is it adjacent to the pool?
Yes, it is the side of the pool.
Okay, and I believe that site was leased to the hotel at some point, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm also thinking about circulation. So, as a resident, if I'm living here, if I pull into the parking lot and I park in the back, do I really have to kind of go back into the building and then find myself back to the lobby just to go up to my house? That seems a little bit awkward to me. And even for circulation, as far as service circulation from the office, if that becomes commercial space or even an office space, how does one take out the garbage? Are they going to leave a trail of garbage in this small lobby that I have for my residences? And again, the entrance circulation, that just seems like a space that I wouldn't want to go through. I mean, granted, you're probably taking your car in when you're going up to the residences, and you're probably never even using that entrance circulation, but it just seems like a tunnel that you have to go through before you even reach the elevator. And when you come in that tunnel, there's nothing that you even see. It's just that wall of the elevator. Those are my initial comments. But again, thank you for coming to the preliminary review.
All right, question?
Sorry, one more comment.
For sure.
Next time, could you please make copies of the plans on 12 by 18 so that we can scale the drawings?
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Netto, maybe you can help answer a question for me. Does this project reduce parking that the hotel now uses next door? It looked to me like there's a series of parking spaces out in front of where the pool was, and it looks like it's parking the hotel's using, and it goes away. But
I'd have to look into it. I'm not quite sure. I know there is parking in front of the project. There's probably at least 4 or 5 spaces, but I'll look into it.
okay, I mean, I think this is one of those examples of we've got this old project. It's got parking that seems to be working, and then we're going to do a development that obliterates that without considering the impact of that. And I want to just make sure that we're aware of that impact as we go forward. This is a challenging one for me, honestly. I know what the zoning allows here, and I know what you're permitted to do. And I was very clear with the last applicant about the fact that they're following the rules and they're doing what they're supposed to do. But contextually, they were compatible with what was around them. And there is no mixed use around this project right now. It's very much light industrial, very, very intense
Contextually,
op-ed
I'm not
use.
sure what, how there really is.
We're anticipating big
Yeah.
change in this area,
Right.
right? We're anticipating lots of mixed use a few blocks down. There's a large building that we've approved that's a nice mixed use project, and there's a number of things that are changing here, but this little island that you're proposing, and it really is like a little tiny island, is very unique in its context at this point. And, I'm challenging your concept here a little bit to say, is this the right thing to do at this point? Would it be better to do something different in light of the fact that none of the other development has occurred yet? I'd like you to consider that. It's not my place to judge whether this will change over time or not, but this looks like a really challenging place for people to have condominiums. And I'm aware of locations all over the city of Palo Alto where condominiums are being used as office space. And I'm quite concerned about that. I'm quite concerned about that. The parking requirement, if this was office, would be 22 and a half cars, not 11. It would be a very different makeup, and there's no way to accommodate that here. So, I'll just voice that. I think Board Member Guyer's point about this, postage stamp of commercial space is really on point. It's not really a usable office space. By the time you take out a handicap restroom and a little bit of storage space for somebody in the back, if it really is, some kind of a retail space or even a little office space, if it has a little hospitality station in the back, there's room for kind of a desk left. It's really not much to speak of, and I think that that's not what we're looking for when we think about what we want.
So programmatically, you're saying.
I'm just challenging your
like to-
concept.
yeah.
I'm not telling you you can or can't. I'm just challenging it and saying that, we're in a preliminary review. There's no findings that come out of this.
Right.
I'm not giving you direction. I'm just providing comments. I do have issues with some of the same things that were brought up by other departments. The bike parking seems awkward. I think Board Member Kim's point about trash and how residents will come and go are really appropriate. The unit egress seems challenging to me. You may or may not have solved that. I'm concerned about the acoustics for the units and what these balconies feel like. I think another possible approach might be to consider more of a courtyard design, where the units turn inward and they share some type of a communal space inside, and maybe they have small rooftop, take advantage of some of those spaces for private space, but there's more of an inward turn and a creation of a little community for these three units, and that they share an amenity in the middle that's a barbecue or a nice little planting area, something that gives them refuge from the intensity of El Camino, the challenging aesthetic of the hotel next door, the lack of certainty about what's going to happen with the restaurant parcel on the corner. As the first one out, I think you need to be defending yourself a little bit from what's around you, rather than embracing what might come. It's just too uncertain. So in regard to the aesthetic of the building, I don't really have a problem with the type of architecture that you're proposing here. I think your combination of some type of aluminum storefront and cement plaster finish and horizontal siding seems consistent with a lot of the other buildings we see. I would not be favorable about a Juliet balcony, but I think that the overall concept of some open railing and some closed railing, and some of the design moves you've made with shading elements, et cetera, seem very appropriate, and I'd look forward to how you will develop those going forward. Any other comments from staff at this point? Anything else that we should be aware of or that you wanted us to focus on?
Well, of interest, and that's been described in the background section of the report, is the Foot Locker site, two or three parcels away to the north. So the interesting piece there is that that project will be going to the Planning Commission first, and it's in for a formal application. So the timing of this will be interesting because, you know, there may be some policy questions brought up on that project, or, you know, just discussion in general of this section of El Camino. So that might be a benefit to the ARB when this project comes back. And you will also see the Foot Locker site because it's a site and design comes back to. So just to let you know, there's another project brewing.
But no certainty about timing on that, and
No, you know, I don't know what
there's
this
no shot
applicant's
clock
plan.
on that at this point, right? It's in a different process.
Right, it's in a, so it goes first to Planning Commission. So we don't have a date quite yet for that.
Right. Anything further that you'd want to respond to, or any questions you might have of us before we finish up here today?
I don't believe so. I think we need to think as far as program and those types of items. And I guess I'm curious about the Foot Locker conversation as far as, I imagine, is that you're saying that it's possible that council might have some comments about the type of uses that would be being proposed, or?
The earlier item, as one of the speakers mentioned, and I noticed it's on the first page of the post today, about goals for retail and such, preservation of retail. I know you're not proposing retail, but you know, that type of thing, yeah, uses along El Camino, what's desired may come up in a conversation at the Planning Commission. I'm not sure, because again, it's been set as a council priority to protect retail. Now, of course, the site is not retail right now.
Right.
So it's not an issue really for your
And
site.
it presently meets the zoning, so I guess, are you getting at that the zoning might be affected or not?
Yeah, there's no plans to change the zoning of this site. So
Perhaps the documents for the Foot Locker are in the public realm, and I'm sure planning staff can help direct you toward where that is on the website. Be good for you to review what's happening there and be aware of as much as you can about the context within which this project will develop. But I do want to really voice my appreciation for you coming forward. I know it takes time and effort to put together a package like this, and I think you know, the ideas are thoughtful and have evoked some good discussion here today, and we'll look forward to where you go with this.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so with that, we will move on to board staff announcements, updates, reports, and comments. Any items to discuss today?
yeah, none, no items before council, no appeals before council at this point of any ARB projects. And so you're plodding along. You might be interested to know that the HRB has changed their meeting date, just to let you know, the meeting day. So they are operating now as of March 12th. They're going to be on every other Thursday, the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, opposite of your meeting. So if there were to be an occasion for a retreat, we do have to think about juggling, you know, with that reality. Of course, often we look for, you know, months that have a fifth Thursday, so it might not be a problem.
Right, of which there are many this year, fortunately.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
So I think, unless there are other comments or thoughts, nice, efficient meeting, and we will adjourn and move on to subcommittee. Thank you.